We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. Now, this is a live show, and if you have a question you'd like to send in, please send it via the WhatsApp, send it via the email address ahkamsos@imamhussein.tv, or alternatively, give us a call here in the studio, 0203 515 0199, and inshallah, me and the Sheikh will be able to discuss and answer all of your queries and questions. I'm your host, Mohsin Shah, and joining me is Sheikh Ali Ma'ar. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum.
How are you this evening?
Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah, Sheikhna, you're looking very nice and clean, and sometimes as Muslims we get some sort of najasa on us. Sometimes dust and soil and things like. Now, when this najasa is on our clothes, how do we, is it najis? Do we consider it and render it najis? And if it is najis, how do we clean it?
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. Basically, if you have a dry dust or soil or dirt on the mat or carpet or rug and it's najis, this actual dust or soil is najis, but now it's dried and it's not wet, and the rug or the carpet is not wet, it won't make the rug or the carpet najis. This contact of the dried soil with the rug will not render it najis unless there's a wetness, moisture. So the one can easily just basically shake the carpet or the rug and remove the soil or the dust or the dirt from the rug, and this is how you can actually avoid making the rug or the carpet najis later on, let's say by the wetness or and such like, because what makes a substance najis is the transfer of a moisture or wet najis to another item, another substance. In this way, it becomes najis.
I see. So the najasa kind of is transferred through a medium.
Exactly.
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 If it's dry, there's not really a medium in between the two to actually transfer the najasa.
Yes.
Sheikhna, what about when we transfer, istihala sometimes, and when one thing becomes another, it was najis and becomes tahir. For example, wine, and then when we're turning wine into vinegar, does the jar and the lid, do they stay najis or are they tahir?
Yes, as a result of this wine becoming vinegar, which is a completely different subject, a different substance, of course it becomes tahir and also halal to consume, because now it's vinegar, no longer wine, which is of course forbidden and haram to consume.
Indeed.
And of course the lid, everything belonging to this, in which the wine was boiling and then it became, basically as a result, became vinegar, everything becomes tahir as a result of becoming vinegar. So yes, it becomes tahir.
Sheikhna, sometimes even human beings can be najis and transfer najasa. Here in the West, it's very, very difficult to actually identify and distinguish people's backgrounds and their faith and their religion and so forth. And if we are dealing with people in the shops and so forth, purchasing items, sometimes they're liquid as well, sometimes the items are wet. For example, if you're in a fish market, they're always on ice, the fishes are all wet. I'm dealing with a salesperson at the fish market. I don't know what religion he is, and he's touching the fish and everything with his hands. Hopefully he wears gloves, but let's say he's not wearing gloves. According to His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah says Sistani, the items that are being handled that are wet, are they najis or tahir?
Well, the Sayyid mentions that as long as the one does not know if the hands of the shopkeeper were najis, then the food is to be considered as tahir, because everything is tahir, is pure,
Until
you become certain and sure that it is najis and impure. So it remains tahir, inshallah.
Sheikh, now a question from one of our viewers. Can you give an example of a doubt that invalidates the salah?
Yes, one of the very well-known doubts is that you make you are in the situation of doubt in the salah of 3 rak'ah, which is like Salat al-Maghrib.
Yes.
If you do any doubts, which means you're 50-50, you're not sure. In this situation, in these 3 rak'at, the salah will be batil.
Okay.
Like the Salat al-Subh, the 2 rak'ah.
Yes.
If you're in doubt, then the salah will be batil.
I see. Excellent. Shaykhna, I believe we have another question coming in from one of our viewers, and that is, if in an attempt to prevent himself from laughing audibly, one's posture changes, for example, his face turns red, would his salah be invalid?
Well, if it's just a change of color, I mean, let's say redness of his face, for example, was shown due to, holding his laughter and so forth, then it's as a mustahab precaution to repeat the salah. Because we are actually standing before Allah Azza wa Jal. We are in ibadah, in worship. We are not in a comedy show, or let's say in a situation in which we are trying to listen to some kind of stories and laugh and jokes and so forth. We are standing before Allah Azza wa Jal. When you read the history of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, you would find that when they come and stand before Allah Azza wa Jal, they would come in a state of
fairness,
shivering and pale faces, and they would really deep into the ibadah of Allah Azza wa Jal and worship and devotion.
I think the narrations even state where Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he came to do wudu, he used to faint out of the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So
yeah, Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam were in such situations where they would, you would see them, they're different in terms of the appearance compared to before or after salah, in a different state, in a different, because they are speaking to Allah Azza wa Jal now, before Allah Azza wa Jal. But if, going back to the mas'ala, if the posture changed, let's say he was holding himself for more than a minute, let's say.
Okay.
He was holding his laugh for more than a minute, and he was quiet and silent for more than a minute. Now the posture changed. Now you won't say that this individual is praying.
Yeah.
He's actually holding his laugh.
Yeah.
Then of course the salah would be batil in this situation.
I see. Yeah. I understand that. Shaykhna, you and I both know that when it comes to blood, there are ahkam around blood being on your clothes and so forth. But a bleeding man can't really pray salah. Now, if one is bleeding from his rectum continuously, is he allowed to wash and then go and perform his salah? His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Hakim, has a fatwa on this. What does he say?
The Sayyid mentions that if the blood didn't stop, then the one can pray with the situation, because this is one of the exemptions in salah, where you can pray where there's a deep wound, there's a continuous bleeding, and you've actually wrapped this wound with a bandage and so forth. You can still pray, but you have to make sure that you wrap it with something, avoid the blood reaching the rest of the body and the clothes. So you make sure that you avoid the blood running towards other parts of the body. So as I've said, you just wrap it with a bandage and so forth.
I see.
And you can still pray, that's fine, no issue with it.
Okay. Shaykhna, are we allowed to ride on crowded buses?
Yes, the one is allowed as long as you don't commit any haram. So you don't look at the opposite gender with lust and temptation. You have to make sure you avoid the haram. In this situation, yes, we can ride, especially in the summertime when the weather is very hot. And of course, the buses and trains are crowded with people. And of course, specifically in the West, where you see that many of the women, non-Muslim women, won't be wearing a decent, clothes, proper clothes. Most of the body is shown.
Yeah, especially in the summertime.
So the one should basically lower his gaze, as Allah states in the Holy Quran, that for both gender, male and female, to lower their gaze and do not look at the opposite gender. That is purer for your hearts.
I see. I see. Shaykhna, is it permissible to play with non-mahram women games such as tennis, table tennis, football and such like?
You see, it's a tricky question, by the way, because what we have now is the opposite gender, and let's say they are wearing proper clothes, for example,
Okay.
and you're just playing without any sorts of, feeling lusts or temptation and so forth.
Competing.
It's just a normal play. The problem is, in most of these games, usually things will gradually lead to some kind of an act of haram or
Okay.
some kind of feeling of haram,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of lust, some kind of banter,
I
cracking
see.
jokes and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the movement of the females when they
I
actually
see.
they jump up and down, for example, to catch the ball and so forth. So it's a bit difficult to say yes or no in this situation.
Could you say inappropriate?
Yeah, it's better to play. I mean, you can play with the same gender. Why not? For example, with the kids, for example. Why is it specifically I have to go and play with
Yeah.
the opposite gender? If the one can control himself fully, that's of course another issue. But as I've said, it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, it happens basically to those who go to colleges and schools that they sometimes have to play with the opposite gender. So they have to work very well.
I see.
They have to balance the issue.
Mhm.
Can they actually hold themselves from the act of haram?
Mhm.
How strong they are against the shaitan?
Mhm.
How strong they are against the inner self, nafs al-ammara? How strong they are against the bad friends around them? So it really depends on how strong your iman is. But as I've said, there's always alternative by playing with the same gender, for example, with a male friend, for example, or if she's a female, by a female friend, or by the kids, for example, let's say cousins, relatives, and so forth.
أحسنت. شيخنا أمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر, forbidding evil, promoting good, forbidding evil. Is this, just restricted amongst, the clergymen and the scholars? Is it supposed to be their job?
Well, it's not only the duty of the ulama and the scholars. Many think that, well, we're just going to go with our life, enjoy ourselves, and the tabligh or the da'wah job will be done by the ulama. We don't care. We just do our best. We pray, we fast, we pay khumus, we attend the majalis, we attend the lectures, and that's it. No, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in a narration, he states, "Kullukum ra'a wa kullukum mas'ul an ra'iyatih." Everyone is responsible, and they have the duty upon those who under them. Let's say if you're a father, you got the family, if you're a tribe leader and so forth, a manager and so forth, that you have to convey this message of enjoining good and forbidding evil. That's part of the furu' ad-din, the wajib.
Yes.
So it's wajib. If it comes, then you have to show your duty and show what you can offer basically as a wajib, and don't neglect it. And don't leave it to the ulama only.
Ahsant. Shaykhina, we're going to go to a short break. Join us after the break as we continue our discussion here on Ahkam SOS. See you after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. Now, this is a live show. We do take in all your questions. If you have any questions you'd like to send in, please send it in via the WhatsApp, the email address ahkamsos@imamhussein.tv, or alternatively give us a call here in the studio 0203 515 0199. Inshallah, we'll be able to discuss and answer your questions. We'd love to hear from you. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykhna.
Assalamu alaikum.
Speaking of questions coming in from our followers and our viewers, we have one come in. I have some issues. Can you help, please? I've been experiencing some things and think that I have been afflicted with evil eye or something.
This individual basically, he is or she is having problem with the evil eye or the ayn, as they say. Problems, they're facing problems in their life, for example. Let's say accidents, breakdown of their, let's say, car, often, for example. Things happening because of maybe some evil eye from the friends or relatives or neighbors and so forth. So what we can recommend is to basically give sadaqah every day if they can. Give sadaqah generously. Also to pray all your salah, the wajib salah, daily prayers, for example. Also to do the qada of the salah, past salah and the fast as well.
Yes.
Also to recite, this is very important, to recite the 4 short surahs at the end of the Quran. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ and قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. Very strong verses and surah in the Holy Quran to repel and remove and protect the one from the evil eye, from the other rest of the evil creations, in other words.
Ahsant. Thank you. Sometimes also it doesn't have to really be iron or this or that. It could be a mental health issue or something like that. If anyone is suffering, do see a scholar and so forth, but also visit your GP to get just to check up if you're not you haven't got any mental you're suffering from mental illness or something like that. Shaykhna, another question from one of our viewers, and that is the use of a lift in a building considered to be seclusion, and therefore is it forbidden for a non-mahram male and female to be on that location?
We have something called khalwa or seclusion, and that means it is forbidden for a male and a female who have not related in somehow through the marriage nikah, through blood relationship and so forth. They cannot stay in a locked place, in a locked flat or room, or even as mentioned here, I think in a lift, for example, without anybody else can access their place. That is considered as khalwa and seclusion, or being alone with the opposite gender who is not related to you. Then of course it's haram.
Shaykhna, what about when we do driving lessons and so forth? Like sometimes you get a driver instructor and so forth, and they're the opposite gender. Now females, our sisters, need to learn how to drive. Is it permissible for them to have a driver instructor of the opposite gender? Same with the brothers. What if they have a female driver instructor?
You see, as long as there is no haram involved, it's just a normal driving, instructing the opposite gender, for example, the other side, without any haram, that should be fine. As we have now, male and female are attending classes. Sometimes the teacher is a male, and you have also male students and female students as well. As long as there's no haram involved, that should be fine.
Ahsant. Speaking of driving, Shaykhna, when it comes to getting insurance, we have to give our details across, how long have we been driving for, how long we've been, held a license and so forth, for previous accidents and so forth. According to His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani, are we allowed to alter, the information slightly just so that we can get a cheaper quote?
The saint clearly mentions that lying for such purpose mentioned is not permissible, is not allowed. Also, he says that it's not allowed to claim money in this way. So the money has a problem if you claim it in this way. And fraud in this way is helping to commit the sin. In other words, such act is haram. And I've heard from one of the ulama, he also said that if this individual makes accident and he claims from the insurance of the other party, the other car, the other car's insurance, and he wins the case, he's as if he's stealing from the other side's insurance company. So it's a problem. It's an issue that we have to be careful. And Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who gives the rizq and sustenance. We shouldn't play with these papers and fraud and so forth. Always be straight.
And I think also, Imam Ali alayhi salam was one of the most just and one of the most honest of people, and we would be tarnishing his legacy if we were to be dishonest. Ahsant, Shaykhna. Next question, Shaykhna. If we are in a country where it's not possible for us to show devotion and religion, maybe even there's a threat on our life and so forth, are we allowed to practice taqiyya in certain circumstances?
There is no objection to conceal your faith and aqidah using what is known as taqiyya. And taqiyya is in Holy Quran. Sadly, some of the non-Shia would, shout and scream against the Shia of Ahlul Bayt that they use taqiyya to lie as means of deceiving people to lie. But in Quran, the story of Ammar bin Yasir, he used the taqiyya as well. While his parents didn't use the taqiyya and they were killed and became shuhada, Ammar didn't use he used the taqiyya instead of in this situation by praising their gods and so forth, their idols, where he was saved from being killed. And the Quran states, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in Surah 16, Ayah 106, إِلَّا مَنْ أُكْرِهَ وَقَلْبُهُ مُطْمَئِنٌ بِالْإِيمَانِ. In this situation, the one, of course, can use the taqiyya to repel and drive away from him all the types of harms, except under compulsion, his heart remaining firm in faith. What is important is the heart remains the aqidah with a strong belief. Yes, he is showing that he's on their path, on their religion, on their faith, but his heart remains mu'min and iman, strong to Allah Azza wa Jal.
Speaking of the heart, Shaykh, now, we also have Jihad Nafs, as one that you have to, the jihad of yourself. And then there's the major jihads that we have and other jihads that we have. The jihad I want to discuss and ask is regarding the actual war and battle. Who has the authority to issue, such action, a notion or a fatwa that we have to go to war and perform jihad?
Basically, jihad is a self-defense. And as I've said previously, that all countries in the world believe in self-defense, and they employ their army, their weapons, whatever they have to protect their borders and lands and interests, of course. And we saw for the past 50 years, 60 years, we had multiple wars and battles from the west and the east. So in Islam, the one who can give the permission to go for the war or jihad is the Ma'asum alayhi salam, the infallible. And the one who is appointed by the infallible to do certain tasks, for example. And of course today is the ulama, the general deputies or the ulama, maraja' and fuqaha, who are allowed to also issue such a fatwa as well.
I see. Shaykhna, if one has a nickname which is, let's say he's famous for and is known by, and people don't actually know this person's real name, they just know him by his nickname, or they were introduced to him by his nickname, or someone said, who is Fulan, and they said, is this person, and they use the nickname and so forth. Is it permissible for us to use that nickname to identify and call that person?
No, it is not permissible, because the Quran states, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَلَا تَلْمِزُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَلَا تَنَابَزُوا بِالْأَلْقَابِ بِئْسَ الْإِسْمُ الْفُسُوقُ بَعْدَ الْإِيمَانِ. Nor shall you slander one another, nor shall you insult one another with names. This is the problem, with names. Evil is the return to wickedness after having attained faith. Surah 49, Ayah 11. So the one should avoid such acts in which would cause the one to being away from the faith and the aqidah and so forth. So the one, you have to make sure that you follow the correct akhlaq of the prophets and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. They never called somebody with their, for example, bad or evil nickname and so forth.
I see. Shaykh, I do believe we have a call, inshallah we'll be able to get through to them. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Your question, please, for the Shaykh.
First of all, belated Eid Mubarak for the month of Sha'ban. And my question is, if I am in the hospital and I am in a critical state, am I allowed to give myself a do not resuscitate? So if in event of my body failure, can I tell the doctors not to resuscitate me and bring me back to life if I was in critical condition?
Okay, can we be a bit more specific? Are you talking about when a patient is maybe in a vegetable state where nothing's working, or that you've gone into what we call clinically dead and they try to bring you back to life with CPR, or they're using like the shocker?
To both.
Both, inshallah. Thank you so much. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your deeds in Sha'baniyah, inshallah.
Thank you.
Inshallah, the Sheikh will be able to answer that question. Sheikhna, so the question was that, so we have two situations here. Sometimes, as you are aware, sometimes the doctor gives the verdict. Someone hasn't got much life to go. They're mentally, they're not there. Physically, the heart is still pumping with the machine. The heart is still pumping and so forth. But their consciousness is not there. It's gone. In that situation, can a patient say to the doctors that if I get to that stage, pull the plug, don't carry on? Secondly, the situation was that if this person's ill and he falls dead, if he says to the doctors, don't try and bring me back, just let me go. When the doctors may possibly, with the electric charge, get the heart pumping again, or with the CPR or anything to bring them back to life, are they allowed to, or is the patient allowed to say, no, just let me go?
Just basically, as a general answer to both questions, the one must make sure that he has no right to take his own life at any price, at any case. Allah Azza wa Jalla, the one who يتوفى الأنفس حين موت. Allah is the one who takes the souls of the individuals. We have no right, absolutely, to take our souls or kill ourselves, for example, as commit suicide and so forth, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
You have to keep this individual alive until Allah Azza wa Jal takes his soul from this world to the hereafter. So in both cases, the one should basically try to keep this individual alive as much as they can until the time comes and they pass away. So we leave it to Allah Azza wa Jal. We are not allowed to kill ourselves in any title or subject you want to call it. You cannot take someone else's life just because of their request, because they're facing pain and so forth. Allah Azza wa Jal يتوفى الأنفس. He takes the nafis and the soul حين موتها, when the death comes.
Thank you very much, Sheikhna. Sheikhna, next question, that when we have charity boxes and we put money into these charity boxes, can we consider that charity as sadaqah? Now, His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Sheikh Isaaq al-Fiyadh, has a fatwa on this. What does he say?
Ayatollah Fayadh mentions that the money which is inserted into the boxes of the charities is not considered as to be sadaqah unless it reaches the hand of the poor. So when it reaches the hand of the poor, then it's counted as sadaqah. Similar fatwa, Ayatollah Sistani also has similar opinion, fatwa. However, Ayatollah Shirazi differs in terms of mentioning that whatever placed in the charity box is considered as sadaqah. So that's the difference.
I see. Excellent. Shaykh, our final question for this evening, and it came via the WhatsApp as well, is: are zodiac signs haram?
In overall, there's no shari'i value with this regard, so we can say haram or halal or mustahab or whatever. In anyhow, if there's no haram associated with this act, then it should be fine. Otherwise, if there's haram, then of course the one should avoid it.
I see. I think there is a science with astrology, astronomy, and so forth. Whether Islam has discussed it, the houses have looked into it or not, inshallah we'll be able to discuss on another show sometime. Sheikhna, thank you so much for your efforts, and thank you to all the viewers for joining us on this episode of Ahkam SOS. Inshallah, please join us on Wednesday, where we'll be looking at our last episode before the holy month of Ramadan. Join us on Wednesday. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, please send them in via the WhatsApp, the email address. One of the brothers called in today, inshallah. If you want to call in, 0203 515 0199, we'll be more than happy to discuss and answer your questions. Inshallah, see you on Wednesday, 6:30 here on Imam Hussein TV 3. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.